We're really, we're really at a decisive moment. There's an off ramp. It's definitely the one that we should be taking. We should be avoiding a return to outright bombing, to renewed military action. That's a very real possibility. And the other possibility, in my view, is pretty much an uncontrolled escalation into full-blown war that would become a regional war and that could become a world war.
So Tucker Carlson just interviewed Jeffrey Sachs, Columbia economist who's advised over 100 governments, and he's warning about World War III breaking out in weeks. With Trump's shoot-to-kill orders and ceasefire extensions creating an unstable powder keg, Sachs is sounding alarms about imminent global catastrophe. Let's break this down.
As we speak, the world economy is reeling. It's reeling because as everybody has learned in their geography in the last few weeks, the Strait of Hormuz is closed. As long as it's closed, it means that there's a worldwide economic crisis building. So time is not permissive right now. We can't say, well, we'll decide in another month. We'll see how things go. We'll negotiate and see what happens. Right now, there is an ongoing, building, global, serious economic crisis. And that is because a narrow stretch of water through which comes an enormous, extremely important strategic flow of resources.
He's absolutely right about the economics. 20% of global oil flows through that 30-mile strait, plus massive fertilizer exports. Trump's current Iran strikes are creating exactly this unstable timeline pressure. The world economy can't absorb weeks of closure without triggering recession-level price spikes across energy and food.
So what is that other path? The other path is, well, we're in this unstable situation. The world economy is reeling because of the Strait of Hormuz being closed. And we have to do something about it. We can't just sit there for weeks or months. And we refuse to just allow it to reopen and not have those goals met. So Trump and his partner in this, Netanyahu, might say the only thing we can do is make the maximal threat. And if that threat does not lead to Iran conceding, then we have to follow through, not with more time and waiting because of this unstable situation, but we have to return to massive bombing, this time even more. And what we can suspect on that alternative is that the Iranians will, of course, strike back and strike back very hard and very rapidly.
This escalation dynamic is already playing out. Trump's shoot-to-kill orders and ceasefire extensions are creating the exact pattern described here. Maximum pressure that demands follow-through. Iran's October missile strikes prove they can penetrate Israeli air defenses, hitting military bases with precision despite billions in defensive systems.
And what we have all learned also since February 28th, since the start of this war, is that the entire Gulf region is exposed to missile fire from Iran, as is Israel, in fact, because we also have come to understand that the anti-missile defenses are permeable, limited, even depleted in many areas. We know that the desalination plants in the Gulf region, the oil and the gas fields, the port facilities are not protected systematically and comprehensively against Iranian attacks. And Iran would completely, totally, understandably respond to what Trump has repeatedly threatened, which is the destruction of Iran. So if we don't take the exit ramp, I personally don't see anything realistic less than an all-out war.
Modern warfare's speed is terrifying. Look at Ukraine. Critical infrastructure destroyed in days, not months. The Gulf region's oil refineries, power grids, and ports are all within Iranian missile range. This wouldn't be gradual destruction like World War II. It's precision strikes collapsing entire economic systems in weeks.
We just pull back. That's the right answer. If he says instead, we can't wait any longer, we're going to attack, I believe we will see a different world 4 weeks from now, a world that is profoundly damaged, the world economy in crisis, the possibility of escalation to a full world war. And I don't think I'm being hyperbolic or naive to say that we are at that fork in the road right now. The problem, once again, is that the right thing to do is not a political victory for Trump. It's not, and it's an outright loss from Netanyahu. Personally, I don't care about either of those. I don't think the individual fates of two politicians should determine the fate of the world, because I don't think that the objectives of Trump and Netanyahu going into this made any sense at all.
Palantir's AI targeting systems are being used extensively in current operations. The reported school incident highlights how algorithmic warfare can cause massive civilian casualties in seconds. Pete Hegseth, Trump's defense secretary, has indeed been celebrating these strikes publicly, showing the dangerous glorification of automated violence that Sachs condemns.
In 1953, Iran was a parliamentary democracy. Iran had not invaded or attacked another country for a century and a half. This was a peaceful country. It had been invaded several times, but it was a democracy that didn't threaten anybody, didn't want to threaten anybody, hadn't threatened anybody, hadn't invaded any place actually since the 1790s in a brawl over who controlled Basra. So, in other words, very esoteric things from the 1790s. But since then, Iran had been bothered, but had not bothered anybody else. And in 1953, the Iranian prime minister elected, respected, Prime Minister Mossadegh, had the audacity to say the thing never to be said by this region, which is, I think the oil under our ground is Iranian, not British.
Operation Ajax is documented CIA history. They overthrew Iran's democracy for British Petroleum's oil access. This reveals Trump's current war isn't about nuclear threats or terrorism. It's about imperial control over a resource-rich nation that escaped American dominance 70 years ago and has been targeted ever since.
We need to bring Iran back under our control because we're an empire. If we're too weak vis-a-vis any piece of our empire, it damages our reputation anywhere. We need to punish these people for what they've done. And there was the hostage taking by the youth radical groups who said, we're doing this because we want the Shah to be brought back here to face a trial in Iran for the crimes of the police state over the last 23 years. And the United States had taken in the Shah in a very unwise decision by President Carter in 1979 for medical treatment, knowing that suspecting it was going to lead to this kind of eruption. They demanded reparations. They demanded an apology. They demanded an end to the U.S. Subversion of Iran. All pretty reasonable, actually, but of course it became the cause célèbre of the United States in 1979. And another humiliation for America, which an empire never tolerates. An empire needs to repay any kind of loss of face with some kind of extreme punishment, not only to get that particular recalcitrant place under control, but to signal to all the rest of the empire, don't you dare try this.
That Treasury Secretary comment is revealing. Celebrating economic destruction as statecraft shows this administration's true priorities. Trump's obsession with Iran spans decades, not just his presidency. The nuclear justifications are convenient cover for what's really a resource grab and imperial control operation.
And the clean break strategy said, we will never accept, we being our new government, never accept the state of Palestine. We will occupy all of what had been the British Palestine, British mandatory Palestine. In other words, we'll control Gaza, we'll control the West Bank, we'll control all of Jerusalem, and we may control other places as well. We'll never do that, but we'll face resistance when we make that claim and hold on to this territory. We'll definitely face resistance. We'll definitely face resistance of militant groups. But what Netanyahu and his colleagues in the United States said was, rather than fighting those militant groups directly, we need to bring down the governments in the Middle East and West Asia that support those groups. And that is what's called the clean break strategy. The clean break was the clean break from the peace accords, from the land for peace idea that Israel would return to its borders, there would be a Palestinian state in return for peace. That's what international law says. But what Israel says is we're never returning. There's never going to be a state of Palestine. In fact, we're going to have what we call Greater Israel, which is all of Palestine, including Gaza, West Bank, East Jerusalem, legal Israel, but also expanded parts of the region.
The 1996 Clean Break Strategy document laid out this exact plan: regime change across 7 Middle Eastern nations to enable Greater Israel expansion. Iran is the final target after Libya, Sudan, Somalia, Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq were destabilized. This current war is the culmination of a 30-year strategic blueprint.
And those governments were Libya, Sudan, Somalia, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. And we've now been pulled into Israel's 7 wars. 6 of those wars have led to bloodbaths and disasters, from Libya still in civil war, Sudan unbelievably in 2 civil wars because we broke the country apart, and each of those 2 parts now has its own civil war. Somalia, there's not even a government. There is a government, actually, very nice prime minister that I know, but barely governance in the country. Lebanon, we see it's an invaded, basically destroyed country. Syria, the U.S. and Israel worked for 15 years from Obama until this past year to overthrow the government. That was an active covert regime change operation. Iraq, the 2003 war and the debacle that lasted for years after that. And Iran was the last. So 6 of the 7 places are in chaos. And from Israel's point of view, great.
The systematic destruction is undeniable. 6 countries turned into failed states, costing America trillions while creating massive refugee crises. This reveals the United States has been implementing Israel's expansion strategy for decades, with Iran as the final piece requiring direct military confrontation.
This is the basic point. Yes, we've had our own misguided ideas about this, but it's just bizarre. Of course, Iraq, we know in detail that this was a concocted war. But Syria has never been understood in as much depth, but it's the same story. Why suddenly did Barack Obama feel the compulsion to task the CIA with overthrowing Bashar al-Assad?
Assad must go.
Yes.
That was on the lips of everyone in one day.
Are you kidding? I remember I was on Morning Joe that morning that either Hillary or Obama said Saddam must go, and Joe turned to me and said, "What do you think about that?" I said, "Oh, that's interesting. How are they going to do that?" Well, it took 14 years, hundreds of thousands of deaths, tens of billions of dollars, massive destruction, massive destabilization.
Refugee crisis.
To put a jihadist in charge.
Trump's Venezuela oil seizure attempts show this pattern perfectly. Regime change for resource control. He genuinely believes killing Iran's leadership would hand him their oil reserves immediately, just like removing Maduro was supposed to give America Venezuela's resources. It's naked imperial resource grabbing driving escalation.
Yeah, strangely enough, I came into my profession, which I've been a professor at universities for 46 years and advised well over 100 governments around the world. I came into this profession writing my PhD dissertation on the oil shocks of the 1970s. I wrote the first model of how they worked, why they had such negative
effects.
After
73
and 79. So I wrote the book, literally, and it's published in 1982 called The Economics of Worldwide Stagflation. The results of those two oil shocks give us an idea of what would happen. What happened in 1973-74 when there was an oil embargo, and then in 1979-80 when there was the Iranian Revolution, was a big disruption of oil supplies. It sent oil prices soaring, and it sent the world economy into a tailspin. And it was a very particular kind of tailspin because people lost their jobs, incomes went down, and inflation soared at the same time. And so you had a economic downturn and a rise of inflation, which at the time was viewed as a paradox because usually you have a recession and the prices calm down, or you have a boom and the prices accelerate. But this was a contraction and an...
Look at recent gas price spikes from minor supply disruptions. Even small percentage losses cause massive price increases. Nitrogen fertilizer shortages would devastate American food costs within months. The destruction happens in weeks, but rebuilding those production facilities takes years, creating sustained global economic crisis.
And instead, what you get is just both sides unleashing their arsenals. And what will happen in a short period of time is not a closure of shipping, but a destruction of the physical capacities of providing the oil and the gas and the fertilizers and the petrochemicals and the other very core commodities for the world economy. And it doesn't take that much to bring the world economy into a tailspin, because you don't need to close down half the oil supply. You might need to shut off 20% of the world oil supply, and that by enough will send the prices soaring, make Americans really suffer across the board, because it's not only at the gas pump and not only in the utility bills, but also in the cost of food, which will soar from this as well, because there will be a worldwide disruption of food supplies coming from this, because we're a very significant proportion of the urea, which underpins the nitrogen-based fertilizers of the world, come from this region.
From natural gas.
From the natural gas production, exactly. From the oil and gas fields, the hydrocarbon production, and other petrochemicals as well.
When a Columbia economist who's advised governments worldwide starts receiving end times emails from ordinary Americans, that's not political hyperbole. It's serious foreign policy expertise recognizing genuine civilizational risk. Sacks isn't being dramatic. He's watching institutional safeguards completely collapse in real time.
And every day when President Trump says we are the most powerful, blah, 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 in the history of the world, this is of course, he feels good saying this. Of course, maybe his followers feel good saying this, but it's completely, totally the wrong approach to our world right now. The serious part of our world is the world faces many deep challenges. There are many nuclear-armed countries. There are many powerful countries. We need to find a way to get along, to understand each other, to cooperate, to solve problems, and to avoid the traps of a war that can destroy the world economy or even the world in a short period of time. So all the bluster is a remnant of the idea that the U.S. has pursued during its imperial era since World War II, that we should run the world.
The original movement promised America first, not Israel first. Supporters voted to end foreign wars, secure borders, and rebuild at home. This Iran obsession betrays every core promise. It's exactly the imperial mindset that the base rebelled against in the first place.